everybody, in this video we're going to talk about product to sum and sum to product formulas for sine and cosine. I'm going to start by deriving the product to sum formulas and then we'll do a few problems. To derive the first formula, I'm going to use that the cosine of alpha plus beta is cosine alpha cosine beta minus sine alpha times sine beta, and cosine alpha minus beta is equal to cosine alpha cosine beta plus sine alpha sine beta. What we want to do is look at what we would get if we add these equations. On the left side, I'll have cosine of alpha plus beta plus the cosine of alpha minus beta. Then cosine alpha cosine beta is in both of the equations, so when I add that, I have 2 times the cosine of alpha times the cosine of beta. The negative sine alpha sine beta is going to cancel with the positive sine alpha sine beta. I'm trying to isolate the cosine alpha cosine beta to get my product, so I need to multiply both sides of the equation by a half. This gives me a half times cosine of alpha plus beta plus the cosine of alpha minus beta. That will be equal to cosine alpha cosine beta. This shows us how to write the product of two cosine angles as a sum. Let's keep these two formulas, and this time, instead of adding, we're going to subtract the equations. Before we subtract, I'm going to switch the order of the equations just to make things easier. So I'll put the cosine of alpha minus beta as my first equation. When we subtract, we can think of taking each of the terms in our second equation and just making them the opposite sign. So I'll have a negative cosine, cosine, and then a positive sine. When I put those together, I have cosine of alpha minus beta minus cosine of alpha plus beta. The cosine alpha cosine beta cancels. When we add sine alpha sine beta to sine alpha sine beta, I get 2 sine alpha sine beta. I'm going to isolate my product, which means I'm going to multiply both sides by a half. I have a half of the cosine of alpha minus beta minus the cosine of alpha plus beta equals sine alpha times sine beta. The last derivation we need to do is going to use sine alpha plus beta and sine alpha minus beta. We are going to subtract these equations, which says let's put a negative sign in front of each of the terms in our second equation. So I'll have a negative, and a positive. This simplifies to sine alpha plus beta minus sine alpha minus beta. I can cancel the sine alpha cosine betas, and I have 2 cosine alpha sine beta. We're going to multiply both sides by a half. So I have a half of sine alpha plus beta minus sine alpha minus beta equals cosine alpha sine beta. As a quick summary, I put our 3 formulas on one slide. You might want to stop and write these all down. Now that we have our formulas, let's try them in a few problems. Our first one says, express the following products as a sum containing only sines or cosines. I'm going to pull back in my formula for sine alpha sine beta. This says we can write sine of 5 theta, sine of 3 theta as 1/2 times the cosine of 5 theta minus 3 theta minus the cosine of 5 theta plus 3 theta. This will be 1/2 times the cosine of 2 theta minus the cosine of 8 theta. Notice I'm not trying to distribute the 1/2. This is my final answer. Our next question says express the following product as a sum containing only sine or cosine given the cosine of 4 theta times the cosine of theta. I'll bring in the formula we want to use, and I'm going to substitute 4 theta for alpha and theta for beta. So cosine of 4 theta cosine of theta will be 1/2 of the cosine of 4 theta minus theta plus the cosine of 4 theta plus theta. This simplifies to 1/2 of cosine of 3 theta plus the cosine of 5 theta. Our last product to sum says we have the sine of 2 theta times the cosine of 6 theta. We'll bring in our formula, then we can write the sine of 2 theta times the cosine of 6 theta is equal to 1/2 of the sine. Now that we've done this a few times, let's try doing it a little quicker. Alpha plus beta says add 2 theta and 6 theta, which would give me 8 theta. I'm going to add, then I have the sine. 2 theta minus 6 theta is going to give me negative 4 theta. We can do one more step here. I can say this is 1/2 of the sine of 8 theta. And because I know that sine is an odd function, I can write this as minus the sine of 4 theta. Now that we know our formulas for product to sums, we can rearrange the product to sum formulas to get formulas for sum to product. I'm going to skip the derivation this time and go straight to the formulas. We have 4 sum to product formulas. I have sine alpha plus sine beta is 2 times sine of alpha plus beta over 2 times cosine of alpha minus beta over 2. I have sine alpha minus sine beta is equal to 2 times sine alpha minus beta over 2 times cosine of alpha plus beta over 2. Cosine alpha plus cosine beta is 2 cosine alpha plus beta over 2 times cosine alpha minus beta over 2. Then sine alpha minus cosine beta is negative 2 sine alpha plus beta over 2 times sine alpha minus beta over 2. These are 4 good formulas to add to your list of equations for the class. Let's use those to express the difference as a product of sines and or cosines. I'm starting with sine of 6 theta minus sine of 2 theta. I'm going to use the formula for the difference of sines, which says sine of 6 theta minus sine of 2 theta is going to be 2 times the sine. 6 minus 2 gives me 4 theta over 2. We're going to multiply that by the cosine of 6 plus 2, which is 8 theta over 2. We'll reduce this to 2 times the sine of 2 theta times the cosine of 4 theta. Let's try the cosine of 7 theta plus the cosine of 2 theta. We'll bring in our formula for sum to product of cosines. Then we'll say that the cosine of 7 theta plus the cosine of 2 theta is 2 times the cosine. 7 plus 2 gives me 9 theta over 2. Cosine of 7 minus 2 is 5 theta over 2. This time I can't reduce my fraction, so I'm going to leave it in this form. As a last example, let's find the cosine of 285 plus the cosine of 195. Because we're finding the exact values, we can't just grab our calculator to do this problem. What we're going to do instead is bring in our formula for the cosine of alpha plus the cosine of beta. In this case, alpha is 285 and beta is 195. This will be 2 times the cosine of 285 plus 195, which gives us 480. This will be over 2. Then we have the cosine. 285 minus 195 is 90, and we divide that by 2. This says we have 2 times the cosine of 240 times the cosine of 45. By now you should recognize the cosine of 45 to be the square root of 2 over 2. We still have a 2. Now we need to figure out the cosine of 240. 240 is in the third quadrant. The reference angle would be 60, and we know that cosine is negative in the third quadrant. For an angle of 60, cosine is equal to 1/2, but because we're in the third quadrant, we have negative 1/2. I'll cancel the 2 with the 2 and the 1/2, which leaves me with a final solution of negative the square root of 2 over 2. If you wanted to check this in your calculator, you could. You could put in the cosine of 285 plus the cosine of 195. It'll give you a decimal. Then to compare your value, you can put in negative the square root of 2 over 2 and make sure the values are the same.